and head down and assemble at the slabbed area in front of the cathedral. There are toilets out here on the left and on the right if you need those. First of all, apologies for absence. We do have a few. Anyone like to? Norman, would you like to start? And we'll
we've got two, Chair. Councillor Pulteney has substituted Councillor Annie Townsend, and Councillor McCarway has substituted Councillor Shabalala.
Okay, yep. Great. Thank you. Councillor Durston, you possibly need to go a little early.
Yeah, sorry, I need to leave dead on 8, Chair. Thank you.
That's fair enough. Thank you very much. Do we have any declarations of interest? Councillor Townsend?
Hi, I just wanted to say that the first application, Wapping Wharf, is in my Central Ward, but I'm not predetermined, even though I've had some engagement as a councillor.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay. Excuse me. Hay fever, I think. Minutes of the previous meeting. Nobody has said that they wish to amend the minutes of the previous meeting. Does anyone now wish to raise any concerns with those minutes? Or shall I? Can I ask for a seconder, please, to approve those minutes? Okay. Councillor Butler. Thank you. We have no actions, do we, on the action sheet? Appeals and enforcement, but we have a very long agenda, or a very we have a large application on the agenda tonight. So unless I won't ask Jonathan to go through and give a report on appeals and enforcement. If anyone has got any particular issues they would like to raise, could you please do that now? Otherwise, I point your attention to the fact that we seem to be doing quite well on appeals, I think. I can. Tom, can you turn me up a bit, please? Thanks. It is hay fever season. I've been seeing emails. So we're doing quite well on appeals. I think a lot of our decisions have been upheld when I was looking through, so that's good. But I see no particular questions or enforcement update. Anybody like to raise anything? No? That then is excellent. So, sorry, Councillor Gooch.
I didn't know it was relevant, but one of the appeals that was upheld was somewhere in my ward, and I've discussed it with Jonathan today. There was an error in the what the planning inspectorate said in the report, and so there is going to be a complaint going in about that, but it's to the planning inspectorate, not to BCC.
Oh, never heard of that before.
There was a factual inaccuracy in the planning inspector's report, so we will be writing to them.
What are the potential outcomes of a complaint? Is it just that they apologise, or do they actually... Okay.
We've had a number of times that we've complained and never had any outcome changed.
Okay. Please don't get too hopeful then, Councillor Gooch, but yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Simone. Right, we now move on to the... actually, we have a Mr. Shipley's not speaking with his general comment on the local plan, I don't believe. No, Mr. Shipley here. Excellent. Then we move on to our first item on the agenda, which is North Plot, Wapping Wharf, Wapping Road, Bristol BS1 4RH. A number of people wish to speak, and the first person I have down here is Anthony Fursman. I've been not present by the look of it. Okay, the second person I have, Hannah Fraser, I have you down as observed. Do you wish to speak? No. Kim Hicks? Kim, you've got, a minute, I think.
Say go.
Go. We're all listening.
Bristol Civic Society must object to this development in spite of some positive aspects within it. Those wins are completely overshadowed, literally, by the height of the proposed residential blocks, which will damage the look and feel of what is currently a thriving area, much loved by locals and visitors alike. The junction of St Augustine's Reach with the main flow of the floating harbour is the focal point of this historic aspect of our city. Hence the Shed Museum of Bristol being located there alongside our magnificent ancient cranes and trains. It is a key and much photographed view from the city centre, Arnolfini, Princes Street Bridge, the Lloyd's Amphitheatre. The importance of this vibrant working dock, which celebrates Bristol's place in maritime history, must be honoured by any developments in this area, and the impact of those cranes against the sky does just that. These obtrusive anywhere blocks certainly do not. Please refuse this application and insist on a redesign to address these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Next person I have on my list is Stephen Wickham.
Thank you. Bristol's Conservation Advisory Panel cannot support the application in its current form. We note the continuing objections of Historic England regarding steam trains, the historic railway and the dockside cranes, and urge you not to grant the scheme as presented. The City Docks character appraisal describes successful development as complementing the maritime setting and avoiding over-dominance of the existing buildings. Instead, the current proposals would have the effect of sterilising the historic character. The scale and massing would be entirely out of keeping with the predominantly horizontal profile of the post-war sheds along the waterfront, destroying the sense of openness which characterises the area and making Jail Ferry steps more enclosed. The character of the dockside would be diminished, Shed in particular being dwarfed by buildings 2.5 times its height, and the landmark quality of the Grade 2 listed travelling cranes would be heavily undermined, involving a permanent and substantial degree of harm to the collective assets and character of the conservation area. Thank you very much. Please vote against this.
Thank you. That ends our public forum. I don't have any other names unless anyone is sitting there and I've missed them off, but I don't think so. Thank you. Okay, we now move to our presentation. Jonathan, do you want to introduce or do you want to hand? Okay, we'll hand over to Charlotte then. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so the application site above is part of the wider Wapping Wharf site that's already been developed, including for 530 homes. The site is an allocated major regeneration site in the city centre. The area surrounding the site you can see above is a mixed-use harbourside area. You'll note the Shed to the north, immediate north of the site. As you'll be aware, the existing site is occupied by the existing cargo shipping containers, home to retail and food and drink uses. And the remainder of the site is a surface car park. The general history of the site, you'll probably be aware, has a long history of shipbuilding as a railway yard. And you can see one of the bottom images below with a large bonded warehouse prior to its bombing in the war and later demolition of the remains. So the applicant has considered the site history and in early stage considerations produced the view you can see at the bottom of how that bonded warehouse would have looked at the end of the harbour side in that image. So the site is within the City Docks conservation area. You can see in the image on the right, also surrounded by a large number of other conservation areas. In the image on the left, this shows the sensitive historic context. Shed is shown in the image in the orange. It's a locally listed building in the City Docks character appraisal. And the cranes outside the Shed are listed structures. Also to note, the Harbourside Railway is an important aspect of the City Docks Conservation Area and has been referenced within the report and by Historic England, noting that officers have considered impacts on that in detail in the report. Obviously, I can't go into all of the heritage assets in that image, but they are covered in detail in the report, the key impacts. So the site previously benefited from a permission in 2007, which was accompanied by a master plan, which showed suggested layout, uses, floor space ranges, maximum scale across the 3 plots of Wapping Wharf. This planning permission was later renewed to allow further time for detailed submissions, but has now expired. And since then, the boundary of the north plot has been extended to include if you can see in the image on the right, what was proposed to be the BRT bus rapid transit corridor. That route now runs along Cumberland Road, meaning that there's a strip of land which needs to be revisited, and the application aims to do that and to consider how the context of the site has evolved since that previous master plan. The applicant have set out in their submission that they consider the context has evolved in terms of the M-shed has since been redeveloped, as you'll be aware, with an additional storey which does alter views in and around the area. Obviously, the cargo development of shipping containers has been very successful, and the applicant is seeking to create a permanent home for the existing tenants, but also to provide greater space for them to make it a sustainable future home. National planning policy places greater emphasis on development of previously developed land, and the housing need requirement is critical, as outlined in the report. Further developments since the master plan include the urban living SPD guidance, and that has increased requirements on development, including aspects such as providing single aspect dwellings, and all of these things together have led the applicants to revisit the proposal for the site. So the application proposal is for a phased development divided by a new pedestrian street, as shown above, with the proposal being that the cargo containers could be located onto the phase 2 area, while phase 1 would be constructed and then moved into a permanent home back in phase 1, meaning that operation could continue even through a construction phase. So the application is a hybrid planning application. That means it is in part in outline. That's the phase 2 element shown greyed out in the image above. And the other element is the full planning application, which means the plans are shown in full detail. So it's important to be clear on that. The outline permission is for access, uses, maximum amount of floor space and height. So the plans you can see show an indication of how phase 2 could be developed, but this could change at the reserved matters stage, but likely this is the sort of broad layout that would be most workable for the site. And this image just shows the parameter plans that show that outline aspect of the development. So the sort of right-hand part of those images is the outline. It's not going into full detail. So just at this point, I'm providing a quick overview of the response to publicity and consultation, which is summarised in the report, and an overview given of some of the key objections and key comments in support. So just to go into the proposal in a little bit more detail, the application proposes blocks that would step down in height towards the east in order to reduce impact on St Mary Redcliffe Church. The step massing has been arrived at in order to create more flats with corner aspects and reduces the amount of single aspect dwellings. A total of 69% dual aspect units is provided. The blocks are taller onto the Museum Street elevation and set back at the top storey. And the block adjacent to Jail Ferry Steps is 10 storeys, aiming to provide a focal point onto Museum Square, with terraces of food and drink uses in this area. Bear with me a moment. In the image on the right, rope walk, this shows the rope walk aspect. Rope walk was originally a narrow service street, but the proposal actually now is to set back with a step building line along rope walk, creating areas of active frontage and public realm. Over the 30% of the site area is given over to public realm, some of which you can see in that image. So in a bit more detail, the ground floor layout. Essentially, there is a proposed walkway around the site adjacent to Museum Street. This is at a raised level because of the flood risk in the area that requires a higher floor level. A pedestrian route is proposed between the two phases in this location with ramps and steps leading onto Museum Street. Quite a bit of discussion at application stage was about Museum Street and accommodating pedestrian access, given that this will be a very busy area. So while pedestrians will move around at this raised walkway level, there's also a pavement introduced along Museum Street itself. So phase one is focused around the cargo hall with retailers and food and drink uses, and upper levels accessed via stairs and lifts in these locations, and accessible provision made to those parts of the development and the residential units. The residential access is shown in the green. So the broad principle has been to move servicing from Museum Street to Rope Walk. That was always the intention within the master plan. Museum Street's obviously a key cycle and pedestrian route, and that was important to safeguard. Overall, the proposal is for 245 new homes with 20% affordable housing. And this image just goes into a bit more detail on the sort of arrangement of loading bays, cycle parking spaces, and car club provision with accessible bays provided on Museum Street. In this location, it's just worth noticing at this point that coach parking for the sort of wider area has been a point of discussion within the application, and an option to include coach parking on the Grove, which is outlined in the report, has been arrived at and has been confirmed by Transport as a good option. So the report goes into a lot of detail on the housing provision, but this provides a brief overview. This image on the left shows you a sort of a reasonable example. Obviously, I can't show you all the floor layouts, but a reasonable example of what the broad layout for residential development is, and gives an overview of the mix of homes and also the number of affordable homes which meet the 20% requirement. So here we have some of the elevation images and images of the taller element, and the proposal has been based around sort of existing architecture in the area with a steel frame and using brickwork typical of the existing Wapping Wharf scheme. Here we have a number of images of the Jail Ferry Steps element of the proposals. In particular, there's been an update to this, which you can see in this image here. It includes sort of increased solidity to the balustrades, along that elevation in recognition of privacy. And this element would incorporate the sort of food and drink uses, particularly restaurants and cafes. It wouldn't include sort of bar type uses. And to reference that, obviously the officer report goes into detail consideration of impacts on residents, particularly from this element of the proposals, which is the sort of closest relationship between food and drink uses and existing residents in the scheme. Essentially, an overview on that would be that we did ask for some further information about that relationship and noise, which we then received, and the pollution control officer has advised that that is a matter that can be dealt with through detailed planning conditions. A number of further images above that I won't dwell on in detail, but you've got them in your packs. And obviously these are computer generated images, and we do need to go off primarily the elevation and the detailed planning drawings, but they do give an indication and they are accurate in terms of scale and detail. Just to note, in terms of sustainability and biodiversity, officers are advising that this is a good positive aspect of the scheme and can be secured by condition. Clearly a key consideration of the scheme, and what I'll focus on just for the final part of the presentation, because it's one of the key considerations that really benefits from some visual presentation, is the impact on townscape views, impacts and heritage assets. So key impacts would be on the City Docks Conservation Area, St Mary Redcliffe Church, the locally listed M Shed and the listed cranes, with full details given in the report. I've got a selection of the key views, but again, I won't go into them in detail, and you do have them in your packs before you, and the full assessment is in the report. So it's important to note with Townscape Visual Impact Assessment that this emphasises that assessment should be made of the views impact overall rather than on individual views alone, and that views clearly change as you move around an area and are not static. So assessments need to take into account the holistic impacts of development. This particular view above is showing the impacts on the St Paul's Church listed tower and how the development would maintain a viewing corridor through to that heritage asset. This is the view from Perrot's Bridge, showing impacts on the M Shed and listed cranes. Obviously, again, views vary depending on degree of separation, distance and viewing angles. These are the views above from the amphitheatre. Again, views change as angles change as one moves through the area. These are the views from the south side of the harbour side, and show the relationship to St Mary Redcliffe Church spire. Obviously, the angle means that the proposed development would be no longer directly behind the cranes from that view. And similarly, above from the Grove car park and Prince Street Bridge, it's a changing views. Here we have impacts from Bathurst Basin, with the development appearing above the listed terraces. And I think this is the last image I was going to present, which is the relationship from Vauxhall Bridge with St Mary Redcliffe Spire, and that's the development just in this location. Just to summarise, really mainly on the heritage impacts, obviously the overall officer assessments within the report. Heritage impacts and harm have been identified to several heritage assets, including the conservation area, the M Shed and the listed cranes. The Historic England response has made clear that one of their key considerations is the impact on the Harbourside Railway, but that if officers are satisfied that the operations of that railway wouldn't be prejudiced, i.e. through introducing residential development adjacent to it, that it is then for the local planning authority to undertake a planning balance of the public benefits against any heritage harm. And the requirements are to give considerable weight and importance to any heritage harm in making that balance. But the advice of officers is that there would be clear public benefits in this case that have been identified as listed within the report, such that our advice would be that the public benefits do outweigh the identified specific heritage harms. All the other sort of planning considerations are judged to be acceptable, and the planning in terms of the planning balance, the recommendation of officers is to approve, subject to delegating to officers detailed conditions and section 106, which are sort of listed in brief in the report, but would be an item we were seeking delegation for. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. Questions, please. Okay, you not got any? Oh, Caroline Gooch. Councillor Gooch.
I was just trying to get to all the things that I've annotated, so I have actually got quite a few. Let me go to the comments. One question, some of the objections raised by the public have included concern that the present businesses will be forced out by higher rents. Will the rents increase?
Well, that wouldn't be a matter that would be relevant to the consideration of this application.
Right. Okay. One thing was that the mix of proposed flat sizes, there's a larger proportion of 2-bed units and a lower number of 1- and 3-bed units, and we wanted more 3-bed units for families. Is that a material consideration?
It is, yes. It is something that was raised during application discussions, and the applicant was in sort of contact with our housing team as well. So they were obviously looking at the affordable housing element, and they did actually make changes to that to aim to meet the sort of what the housing team's requirements were, or their sort of preferences. So although it is, that proportion could be increased, overall we would be recommending that it's an acceptable approach, and overall, particularly in terms of affordable housing, they have addressed what was being asked.
Okay. Next question, it's about the flood risk. So if we didn't have the flood risk BAFS, I don't know what BAFS stands for, actually, but Bristol Avon
Flood Strategy.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if that, for some reason, isn't in place by 2040, would the people living in this development actually be in danger from not having correct mitigation against flooding? I mean, where you're recommending it goes ahead on the grounds that the BAFS will be in place by the time that it's needed, but what if it's not?
The advice we've received is that the BAFS is now at a sort of stage of development where there's confidence that is to be achieved. So it's now possible to take that into account within considering schemes, and this scheme would make a contribution towards that, and essentially the delivery of the BAFS would be within that time frame to 2040. So it also has a sort of phased approach, the BAFS project. So it's not done all in one go, but it's done in phases, and our flood risk management team advise, you know, which phase benefits which part of the city and takes that into consideration.
Okay, sorry, I've got a few more questions. Some of the properties are very close to where the steam train starts its engines up, and in the overheating section there's a bit that says, oh, it's fine about the overheating because people can just open their windows, but the people who live near the steam train, they're advised to keep their windows closed to avoid the fumes from the train. So how do they avoid the overheating?
So the overheating assessment does include some mechanical ventilation to, I think it's not all properties, but certain properties, including those in that location. So obviously, while we don't want everybody to rely on mechanical ventilation all the time, there would be that option for, you know, the hottest periods or heat waves, and also for periods where, you know, you'll note in the report that the steam train doesn't run, you know, every weekend, and it's not all throughout the year, so it's quite specific timings where people could have an alternative means of ventilation at that point.
All right. And one more question, which is, it's actually about the houses behind, so the buildings behind, which are fairly recent developments, I think, the ones with the pitched roofs. And I understand that part of the development, them getting planning permission was so that they actually looked like the warehouses, etc., and they had the pitched roofs. And that they weren't that high as well. So these ones are a lot higher, and they don't have the pitched roofs. So is it fair what conditions were put on the other buildings that don't seem to have been applied to this application?
So I think the buildings you're referring to are part of the existing Wapping Wharf development. So the developer Umberslade sort of manages that part of the site. So obviously that was one approach to design that was arrived at that time, but it's sort of not to say there aren't alternative appropriate approaches to design that would still address character and architecture in relation to the dockside character. I think there's other things to note, that obviously things have moved on and developers have a lot of other things that they need to consider in arriving at a design, including things like air source heat pumps. There's actually quite a lot of demands on roof spaces and how to provide energy, renewable energy regeneration. So there's no objections per se to a flat roof development. It just is a different design approach that has to be assessed on its own merits, really.
I think the other thing just to add, which you raised in your presentation, Charlotte, was just around the introduction of dual aspect units as well here in this development, and the approach that's been taken there. Obviously, the urban living SPD there's been a significant change that's come in kind of since those that previous phase of development.
I think also just to note on that obviously this scheme is building on the success of the existing cargo development, which, when it was introduced, was just a temporary sort of meanwhile use, but has obviously been, as you can see from the public representations, massively successful. And this scheme aims to provide sort of sustainable, permanent accommodation for existing tenants and future tenants, and that means providing additional storage space, additional floor space, and it also includes flexible workspace. And we're finding that, providing really good, true mixed-use development in the city is quite challenging, but that this really does do that, and that has sort of implications in terms of the overall height of the development. Sorry, Simone, did you want to add something?
I just wanted to add that in terms of design, like you showed on your very first slide, that the historic bonded warehouse that was there was actually very tall as well, and I think had a flat roof too. And so I think, there is precedent, and hence it's completely justified in that sense. Yeah, I think that was equivalent to 10 stories, the height.
I think we saw a picture of it at the briefing, Councillor Stone. Is that right? Councillor Stafford Townsend then.
Thank you. I'm just Townsend now as well, just to keep everybody on their toes. Yeah, so actually just bouncing off of that one, for clarity, can you confirm how many stories the original bonded warehouse was? And also the master planning, how tall was the densing and the massing in the original master plan?
I don't actually have a sort of number of stories for the bonded warehouse. I think, although it is sort of relevant consideration, it's sort of they're not the only thing we're considering in terms of, it's a policy assessment in terms of heritage, harm and impacts, and that's sort of outlined in detail in the report, including that, I suppose the views of the listed cranes, for example, that's only one part of their significance, quite a large part of their significance, but it's only one element of it. But in terms of the master plan, so if you can see in the image on the left, it gives details of the sort of blocks we're looking at here. I don't actually have, I think, the exact heights on there, but there's a variety of heights. I think it was maybe 5 to 6 stories in this location. Dropping down in these yellow boxes was, I think, probably 3 stories. I'd have to review that and double check because it varies across this whole site. But I think, again, the key thing is that the planning assessment for this application is not a sort of comparison exercise necessarily to the master plan. It's an assessment against the current present day policy considerations. And while the master plan did put forward a suggested approach to development, that's not a sort of fixed planning drawing as such. The applicant's taken I suppose, a relevant approach to review that in an evolving context. So I think I just sort of urge everybody to consider that it's not a comparison exercise purely against the master plan.
That's okay, just trying to get an idea of what people might have been expecting to have built there when they moved into other units on the development. The thing that I particularly wanted to double check, and it might be somewhere in here, but I can't see it obviously, is that on a previous version of the plans, there were sort of internal ground floor servicing for deliveries so that people could get their deliveries and other services are available, type deliveries and things like that without them blocking up the Rope Walk or Museum Street. Is that still in there as part of the design?
No, the strategy doesn't include access. The car park is basically within the basement, so it doesn't include. I think it's sort of limited deliveries, but the major part of deliveries is on Rope Walk, and that's been assessed in detail through the sort of transport team considerations. And we've got a member of the transport team here who might be able to comment in a little bit more detail on that.
Thanks, Try. Yes, the servicing will all be moved into Rope Walk, and there are specific servicing bays in there, so which will all be dealt with, in terms of how they're managed and everything by condition. Rope Walk will be under the management of the Wapping Wharf development, and that will all have moved then from Museum Street, which won't have any servicing access to the frontage.
Good, so sort of contain the chaos from spilling out everywhere.
As much as is practicable. We've worked very, very hard with the applicants to try and work out a sort of an appropriate.
Okay, right, thank you.
Okay, Councillor McGraby was first, Councillor Stone, then Councillor Shabalala.
Yeah, thanks. I'd like to ask how. I'd like to ask how many car park slots are there in the underground car park? I've seen that there's a plan. I've seen that there's planned to be 195 like homes. So like how many car park slots will there be to cope with these homes? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just checking in my notes. I believe it's around 156. Just trying to check that I had it within my notes somewhere within this. Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
That's what I've got as well. Sharon.
Yeah, so that's 156 within the sort of basement car parks, and then there are car club bays on Rope Walk and 3 disabled accessible bays on Museum Street.
And does that include commercial car park slots or not?
I believe the intention is that basically all servicing and deliveries for commercial is from Rope Walk. I think there might have been a sort of quite limited number of spaces within the car park for commercial. Jane, do you have anything on that?
Sorry, I was under the impression that it was all residential, but I can have a look through the.
Yeah, from memory, I think it may be in the report, but it was quite a limited number, I think.
And
we'll have the answer for you in a moment when Jane's perused the all the things.
Sort of thing. I also saw that at the start in the proposals they had 300 car park slots. So how come that's been halved? Is there a
Sorry, were you referring to the existing car park on the site?
I am, yeah.
So you're referring to there would be a perceived loss of car parking overall? Yeah, the existing car parking is a sort of obviously a general public car parking, so there is a loss there, and that is part of the consideration, but that is in line with the city's overall transport strategy to obviously reduce car travel into the city centre. So although the development does include car parking spaces, that's considered to be in a proportionate response in relation to the size of development overall.
Yeah, that's good.
I think just to add in terms of the numbers as well, that's covered under, if you look at key issue E in the report, and that deals with the loss of parking as well.
Can I just, I've found the numbers. So it says 23 commercial office spaces, 10 retail spaces, and the residential would be 123, plus the car club spaces and some visitors disabled parking.
Excellent, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Councillor Stone?
I have two questions. My first question is, it's just a clarification, to be honest with you, and that's to clarify affordable again. And I know we often need it to be clarified, but I just want it to be said out loud. Do we mean affordable as in market rate affordable, or affordable in social housing affordable? What affordable do we mean?
So the application was advised on by our affordable housing team as to what they would be seeking, and to bring it in line with what they were asking for. The applicants haven't, it's within the report, within the key issue, but the applicants haven't partnered with an affordable housing provider at this stage, so that would be a sort of next step in order to finalise detail. But obviously that would be also written into the section 106 to secure the appropriate mix of tenures and a mix of sizes as well, but without having the exact numbers in front of me, but it is covered within the report, and that would be secured at section 106 stage.
Thank you. Councillor Shabalala, and then I think then Councillor Durston. Okay, Councillor Shabalala.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Just wanted to check in terms of relevant policies, item 1. What's the impact of the Harbour Place strategy from this development? Is there any feedback that the Harbour Place strategy has kind of influenced in any way? That's one of the questions.
I think the main thing to note is that the application is contributing significantly to the public realm in the area. So over 30% of the application site is public realm, and this proposal meets a lot of the aspirations of the Harbourside place shaping strategy in terms of active frontages and contribution to public realm on Museum Street. And I think that's something that we will also be looking at in terms of planning obligations, in terms of reviewing the applicants already made significant contributions to, for instance, Museum Square under the initial phases of their development. But that's the sort of next step if they're to be granted planning permission to look in some more detail at that. But overall, the scheme is considered to be a sort of positive and compliant scheme in relation to that strategy.
Brilliant.
There does need to be, just to add a bit of focus on some of the aspects like Museum Street and where there's historic rails, things like that, some of the movement issues and accessibility in the area. But Museum Street's Bristol City Council owned land, so the scheme is sort of providing for that on their site boundary.
Yeah. So in terms of the in terms of the density issue, obviously this exceeds that optimum density. So how does this then lay over with the council's urban living guidelines?
Yeah, I think in terms of the urban living SPD, this sets out an approach looking to optimise density in particularly city centre locations, locations especially in sustainable locations where we would be seeking to look at optimising density in order that land is used efficiently and we're providing homes in sustainable locations. So the urban living SPD sets out a strategy for doing that to achieve most efficient use of land, but also making sure that living environments are also of a sort of standard that is appropriate, and so that includes things like meeting space standards, the proportion of single aspect versus dual aspect dwellings, provision of balconies, and private amenity space or kind of communal amenity space. So officers consider that this approach, it's sort of pushing the boundaries of that density, but I think, we've already discussed the significant public benefits of things like the commercial offer on this site, which are quite unique to this site, and that overall we have assessed in detail all of those urban living considerations, and that looking at it overall, it's an acceptable and appropriate approach in this location, but being quite clear that it is this location because it's such a key site and a key focal point, and it's got this extra provision of commercial uses also.
What are the feedbacks? My last question, Chair, is around the what do you call it? Designing crime out report. And looking at that, I could see some of the officer recommendations, or rather the police recommendations in terms of safety, either both between CCTV or better lighting strategy. Can you just elaborate on that designing crime out report, please?
Yeah, I think our designing out crime police officers comment on sort of all large applications, and it tends to be a pretty standard approach to recommend planning conditions to look at the sort of finer details of development. Obviously, they'll look at the sort of key layout and fundamental issues that might need design changes, but really in this instance, they're saying it's acceptable subject to further details via condition of things, you know, down to entry systems, CCTV, lighting, all of those things that can be looked at by condition. And particularly with the lighting, we'd want to look at that in conjunction with considering impact on residential amenities so that you achieve a balance of lighting that's, you know, minimising dark areas but isn't going to be too bright for residents living close by.
Thank you. I'm going to move to discussion now, please. So could you keep your comments as brief as possible? Who would like to make any comment? Councillor Durston.
Thank you. So I feel like this application represents a real opportunity in a sustainable and brownfield location. I can still remember what this part of the docks was like when I first moved to Bristol. Quite underused and sort of disconnected feeling, and it's now one of Bristol's most kind of vibrant parts of the city to live and work and socialise. So I do feel like this development has the potential to continue that transformation. I think the two-phased approach is really sensible because it means that existing businesses can continue trading while the development is delivered. This was one of my questions, but actually I realised it was more of a comment, and it was around what Sibs has raised on public safety, that there were some public comments received regarding the impact of the proposals on the safety of the area, particularly at night and for women, due to the additional enclosure resulting from taller buildings. And the report states that this will be addressed by the provision of natural surveillance and the lighting that we've just talked about. So it's more just of a request at that stage if we can see like a women's organisation or an organisation that represents women or people from more marginalised communities to kind of get them involved in that part of the process would be really great. I do have some concerns around the height and density, particularly in relation to the conservation area. And I do understand why some residents are worried about the issues with enclosure and overshadowing. But for me, what weighs the balance in favour is the delivery of housing, including the 50 affordable homes. Plus the economic benefits. So I do acknowledge those concerns, particularly around height and sort of managing how it works with the railway and the cranes, but I do believe the benefits outweigh the harms, and I will be supporting this application.
Thank you. Councillor Townsend?
Thank you, Chair. So obviously, so highly conscious of the concerns about the height and the massing, but we need to optimise our usage of brownfield sites, and personally, I'd rather see more mid-rise developments like this than high-rises in other parts of the city, because most of the city centre is a conservation area of one way or another. And I'm pleased to see that the social and affordable housing that's provided in this is for families rather than single people, because that's what we're crying out for in the city centre, is social and affordable housing for families. So I'm really glad to see the developer offering that within this, and also integrated into the development rather than with a portal like we've seen in other developments. They are equally equitable in this development, which I like to see. I know that the developers also worked very carefully with the existing businesses, which I've been quite pleased to see as a ward councillor. And I know it's not material consideration, but I know that the sort of the sustainability of those businesses is taken vitally into consideration, and it's sort of reflected in the phasing that is being the phasing approach is being taken to it. And I think it's really wonderful with the cargo tower at the end, where harbour vistas are becoming available to all, not just those that can afford a penthouse, which is something that I like to see more of in our city, and hopefully we get more of across the city centre. I like the active frontage all around it, and I like the greening of the scheme, and I'm really pleased that that's been retained. So on balance, I'm very pleased to support this scheme, and I think we should be seeing, I'd like to see more schemes of this quality across the city centre as we continue to develop and rebuild it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Breckles, and then I'm going to propose the officer recommendation.
Yeah, I just echo what's just been said by Councillors Lisa and Annie. I like this. I think it's quite an exciting design, and I think the size of the bonded warehouse that was stood on the site before it was bombed in the war is very similar to this. I also think that it's set back and stepped back well enough to not, to fit in well. And I think, yeah, I agree. I think the retail area at the end of the sort of stacked retail area is going to be stunning. It's going to be a real destination in an already fabulous part of the city. So yeah, I'm happy to support it.
Thank you. Okay, I propose the officer recommendation to approve. Do I have a second? Councillor Breckles. I'll go around then. Councillor Townsend, for or against?
For.
For. Councillor Stone.
For.
Councillor McGraby.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Shabalala.
So can I just check, is this also for ensuring that the officers have got delegated authority, or is just for the planning material?
It is the recommendation as stated in the papers.
Can you fully state them first?
Could you fully state the recommendation, please, Charlotte?
To approve subject to officers agreeing conditions in section 106.
Chair.
Yes.
I support the recommendation, but I think in terms of the section 106, maybe we do need some consideration in terms of more public and community involvement within it. So for me, my recommendation would be that we can adjust some of that.
Just say,
I know, but you didn't start it. You didn't start by saying what is the vote for. So that's why I'm going back.
Well, the vote is for the officer recommendation as stated in the papers. I don't sense any appetite to amend it. So, would you like to vote for or against?
I'm voting for.
You vote for. Thank you very much.
Public engagement in it.
Thank you, Councillor. Well, I'm sure that message will be taken on board by the developers. Thank you. Councillor Gooch?
I did want to actually have a bit of discussion, but you moved too fast. Yeah, one thing I was going to say is that the I don't think that the cranes were listed in 1946, so I think that's something that we haven't actually discussed. So I'm going to vote against.
Thank you, but we've raised many issues which were already in the papers for people, and they should come to these meetings having read those. Councillor Badruddin?
For.
Councillor Durston?
For.
Councillor Breckles?
For.
Myself for. That is approved then. Thank you. We now have a 5-minute break, which has been asked for by councillors before we move to the next application. please be back in your seats. I will start in 5 minutes, which who's not here. We have... Well, we have started on time. I know I have a long list of people who wish to speak. Councillor Pulteney isn't here. Imogen Waite? I don't know where Councillor Pulteney is.
Hiya, shall I start? Shall I start?
Yes, please.
Chair, councillors, my name is Imogen Waite. I founded Bravas with my husband Kieran 14 years ago. This issue that you're deciding on today is more than a simple technical planning issue. It's about what we value as a city, the importance of human connection, and how we want Bristol to thrive. I'm sure that you, like me, want to see healthy, thriving high streets, and I believe that Bristol should be very proud of Cotham Hill. It has been a fantastic success story, and we want that to be allowed to continue. In a world of increasing loneliness and isolation, for 5 years our terrace has been helping to build connection. It has turned an old parking space into a place where people actually spend time together. Go there any day or evening and you will see people smiling, laughing and enjoying themselves. You will see spontaneous interactions between tables, solo diners talking to our team and neighbours bumping into each other. What we need for Bristol is a human-centric approach. We need councillors who understand where the real risk in society comes from and understand what the people of Bristol really want. Connection and community should be valued over bureaucracy and red tape. Important change that serves the people of Bristol will not happen without friction, and it doesn't come from sitting with the status quo. We all want safe streets and strong communities. I'm asking you to recognise what is already working well on Cotham Hill and back it by approving the terrace.
Thank you. Councillor Pulteney, you have a question?
Thank you, yes. I've seen the written answers to my questions. Thank you very much. I had a couple of supplementaries, if that's okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Supplementary one, in respect to the issue of precedent in this case, and I'm just going to quote directly with an omission from the officer's report, the precedent will give way to similar applications which could ultimately result, and he refers to harm. If we apply that principle to another case in front of us, if the members of this committee were minded to refuse the next application, the land at Home Gardens, on the grounds that the precedent would give way to similar applications which could ultimately result in, for instance, loss of residential amenity for neighbours, how would officers advise them?
Do you want to, or Jack?
I mean, I think really we've covered that in the answer that's been provided, you know, really to the question, and clarified that, and also explained in terms of the relevance of this kind of principle to this application and the implications potentially at other neighbouring restaurants if other comparable structures were to come forward. I mean, obviously, this evening the committee will just be assessing one in isolation, but I think the point really that was being made is there is also, you know, that kind of future scenario as well that just needs to be kept in mind if others were to come forward, and what the implication of this decision as potentially material planning consideration in the consideration of potential future proposals would be.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing how the committee does respond to that.
Can you carry on with the next question, please?
Yes, just in response to the... apologies, I think my third question may have been misunderstood slightly. What I was asking was, in the 5 years almost that this structure's been there, is the council or anyone in this room aware of any incident, any accident, any near miss, any problem with access that would substantiate the concerns that are raised in the report? It sounds like the answer is no, but I just wanted to confirm.
No, there hasn't been any incidents as far as I'm aware, and I think others might be aware as well, but I think with emergency accidents or incidents and accidents, just because there hasn't been one, that doesn't necessarily mean there won't be one. And I think that's all, you know, the absence of a previous emergency doesn't necessarily mean that there won't be one in the future. Sorry, that would be my answer to that.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Dan Williams.
Hello, my name's Dan Williams. I own Coffee and Beer, basically opposite Bravas. I find myself in a similar situation with a outside deck. So a few points I would like to raise is the design. If we're talking about the design of the structure, that's subjective. I don't think we haven't been given any guidelines on what design-wise this should be by the council or so fit. One issue is about utilities and upkeep. I've asked several times the council if there are any utilities underneath my deck that they would require access to, and nobody can confirm this to me. So I don't know how access to said utilities can be an issue if they can't be provided which ones we are needed access to. Obviously, the main thing is about the emergency access. Now, obviously, this is of utmost importance, and we are not trying to kind of deviate from the rules or kind of pull a fast one or do what we're not supposed to do, but we're asking for a bit of common sense in kind of what is allowable and the access. Obviously, the issue being the planters being narrower than what the structure's there. And my final point would be just to take everybody back 6 years to what was a rat run of a street with people double parking and kind of just thing. And if we're talking about emergency access, there was very little emergency access on that street. So what we have now is distinctly better all round. Yeah, and that's what I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person I have here, unless I have got this wrong, do you have a statement, Councillor Portney, as well as a question?
I do. That came out very quickly. Sorry. Thank you. I just found my notes. Committee, please grant the application. It's very easy to say that we support local independent businesses. It's very easy to say that we support sustainable growth, or that we want ethical procurement, or decent pay and job creation. It's not always as easy to say that businesses benefit from pedestrianisation, but here we have an example of a business that took the risk. Cotham Hill is the council's exemplar for car-free local centres. Bravas is an exemplar of a business that practices the values we champion. Given the opportunity, they used the space, as the other businesses did as well, just as they were encouraged to by the council. They worked within the lines that the council drew. They made a success of our policy. The objections in front of you are dealt with. It is really saddening to see that someone seems to have gone out of their way to solicit objections. But Avon and Fire and Rescue have confirmed Bravas is not the problem. The water objections can easily be conditioned, and I would stress, if it puts the committee's mind at ease somewhat, the Licensing Committee is awaiting a report from officers to help regularise and regulate this kind of structure. How many of them? For how long? Etc. The Licensing Committee rejected the last policy because it was too restrictive. We're waiting for the next one, but you're not creating a Wild West here if you say yes. You're allowing this kind of structure to take the next step under a more appropriate regulatory regime. Thanks.
Thank you. Craig O'Brien.
Hi, my name's Craig O'Brien. I live locally to Bravas. Bristol prides itself on its support for creative businesses, and in particular its independent food culture. Bravas is one of those businesses that makes Bristol special, and this deserves a certain amount of support from the City Council. The Council themselves have closed this part of Cotham Hill to vehicles, and allowing the curbside to be used for outside seating should be encouraged and does not set a precedent for highway land elsewhere where this is not the case. It's not a closed highway. The Council have therefore made Cotham Hill different in that respect and have said themselves that it does not object to the use of the land itself as outdoor seating. The outdoor seating area is not a permanent structure and should not be treated as such. This amounts to an error in the way this application has been considered. The Council has restricted the width of the Cotham Hill itself through the use of planters. These cause the highway to be narrower than the outdoor seating area does and are very heavy such that they cannot be moved at short notice. Council claim that access is required for a fire tender, but this is not the case. The closed area of Cotham Hill is 41 metres long from end to end, and the access by a fire hose is 45 metres, so the tender does not need to enter this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor George Calasconi.
Thank you. I'm here to ask to approve the application for Bravas here in Bristol to retain its outside seating structure. This structure has been in place for over 5 years without serious complaints or issues. Its longevity demonstrates that it is safe, well managed and suitable for its location. It has become a familiar and accepted part of the street. The level of public support is exceptional, with almost 1,200 comments in favour. That is a powerful indication that the community values both the structure and the vibrancy that it brings to the area. Visually, as well, with the street, within the streetscape, it is well maintained, kept clean and managed responsibly. The structure is also fully movable and therefore not permanent. Bravas is a locally owned business providing important local jobs and contributing positively to the area's character and economy. For all those reasons, proven track record, public street backing, visually suitable, safety and economic benefit, I respectfully urge you to approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Chloe Smith.
The proposals seek to retain 2 external seating areas in association with Bravas, although the area to the north does not strictly require planning permission. The nature of the street furniture to the north also allows it to be removed in an emergency and can be laid out to ensure a carriageway width of 3.7 metres is provided, as detailed in multiple submissions. We met with Avon Fire and Rescue yesterday to discuss the proposals. They did not consider the structure to present an urgent safety risk and as of today have removed their objection. They are willing to work with the applicant and BCC to find a long-term solution to address their concerns related to the existing street layout, whereby planters have reduced the width below the 3.7 metre requirements. In addition to this, the TDM guide details that a fire hose should get within 45 metres of a new development. Applying this to Cotham Hill, a fire tender, even stopped at the bollards, can get within 45 metres of all units along this stretch. The South West Water comments have not confirmed the exact location of their pipe network in relation to the covered structure. Notwithstanding this, the structure can be removed if required.
Thank you. Kieran and Imogen Waite.
Chair, members, thank you. My name is Kieran Waite. In 2012, I co-founded Bravas. Members, whatever your politics, I hope we can all agree on 3 things. Safety comes first, decisions should be fair and evidence-led, and we all want thriving local high streets. The officer report records over 1,000 comments in support. The recommendation to refuse has been driven largely by safety and access concerns. Since the report was written, there has been a major change, and after meeting me on site, Avon Fire and Rescue have updated their position on the planning portal and removed their previous objections. They confirm we have demonstrated the required 3.7 metre width immediately outside of Bravas, which was the primary reason for earlier objections. That matters because it means the committee is no longer being asked to refuse on a live fire service objection at our location. We've also submitted independent fixed point evidence from Walker Ladd, supported by highways evidence from Ardent and drawings from Nicholas Maudley Architect. We have a management plan, staff procedures, and can add clear table signage immediately. 8 local jobs rely on this terrace. Because it's sheltered, and it enables us to provide stable hours and proper employment throughout the winter, not cancelled shifts whenever the weather turns. It's also become a valued part of the pedestrianised street and how people use Cotham Hill. I don't know how we got here, but I've learnt a lot from the process, and tonight I'm asking you to bring this to a fair conclusion. Please approve, back a community that's spoken up because there's been enormous social and economic benefit. This can and still should be a good news story for what can be achieved when people work together. COVID is part of our heritage. It was awful in so many ways for everybody, and the Bravas Terrace and wider pedestrianisation of Cotham Hill is one small silver lining that has come out of that. Let's protect and celebrate, as the motto for Bristol hangs in front of us, saying, with virtue in industry, Bristol's industrious, creative and resilient spirit in the face of adversity. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's all the public forum statements, unless somebody wants to correct me on that. Okay, thank you. Serena, you have a public forum statement? I don't believe I have you down. Do we? You're not on my list.
Yeah, we've changed it. We're doing it piecemeal, not all at once.
Maybe a different list.
It's for the next one, Serena.
Next one.
I submitted it. I was told by Democratic.
Well, many people submitted them, but some submitted them late.
No, mine was on Thursday night, Chair.
You're down to speak on the next item.
And this one as well. I submitted 2 statements. One Homes Gardens.
Well, I'm afraid we don't have any record of the first one. You're down to speak on the second one. We're now going to have a presentation, short presentation from Jack. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so the proposal is for the retention of 2 external seating areas used in association with Bravas. Some context for the site. The site is located within the White Ladies Road conservation area, just off White Ladies Road between White Ladies Gate and Hampton Park. The stretch of road between 4 and 18 Cotham Hill was pedestrianised originally temporarily in 2021, however was made permanent later on. The application is for the retention of 2 seating areas situated on Cotham Hill outside of the front of the restaurant on the highway. One of these areas of seating, the area closest to the restaurant, is formed of a structure comprised of a wooden base and a cover on top with sides that can be taken away. The second area of seating on the opposite side of the highway is comprised of just tables and chairs. The recommendation for refusal is not based on the seating on the road in general, but the presence of a structure. This plan here is a site plan showing the pedestrianised area of the street with Bravas in the middle and showing the 2 areas of seating. And this slide just shows some images of the road with the footpath on the left and both seating areas on the right. The application has received a large number of comments from the public. Over 1,000 comments, as mentioned, have been received from members of the public in support of the application, with the reasons for support being the positive impact that it has on local business, the creation of community atmosphere, the design of the structure and its cultural value, as well as these 14 comments were received in objection to the application, with the reasons being the loss of public space, its visual impact, noise and disturbance, and the obstruction of the footway. So there's been representations received from Transport Development Management Team and Bristol Water, or South West Water, also known as, in objection to the proposal, which have formed the reasons for refusal that are shown on the screen. Transport Development Management consider that the presence of a permanent structure in the highway would lead to maintenance issues and would hinder the highway authority's ability to sweep and cleanse the street, and consider that it would have an impact on usability and effective width of the footpath adjacent to it. And concerns have also been raised by South West Water that this would have an impact on their ability to carry out any works or emergency repairs on underground pipes in the location. There are also some concerns raised with regards to the design of the structure based on its size and the materials used, and therefore its impact on the conservation area. As of this morning, we have been informed by Avon Fire and Rescue Service that they no longer object to the proposal and have removed their previous 2 objections of the application. The objections formed a key reason for recommending refusal of this application, as stated in the officer report. But at such short notice, we haven't been able to change the report or provide an updated version. A key reason for the refusal in this application was that Avon Fire and Rescue Service were not satisfied that an adequate width would be left in the highway for a fire tender to operate in the event of an emergency. As the fire service are now satisfied that an adequate width is available for this, this is no longer a reason for refusal. The officer recommendation is still set out in the published report, which is to refuse the application. However, the removal of the objection from Avon Fire and Rescue Service is a significant late change and should be regarded as such. And were this to have come to us earlier, a different assessment may have been made, or would have been made. The committee should now make a decision on the remaining reasons for refusal, and if permission is granted, then conditions can be added as necessary to the application. Thank you. Sorry, I just realised.
Thank you.
Anything?
Jane, would you like to add anything or just respond to questions? Okay. Any questions, please? Councillor Breckles.
Okay. Has South West Water told us exactly where their pipes are in relation to that road?
No, we haven't received that information.
So they could hypothetically be smack bang in the middle of the road itself and not obstructed by anything. Okay, thanks. And also, if we can go back to the site plan on slide 4, please. That's it. How quickly could the planters, cycle stands and other seating areas be moved if required in an emergency?
The planters could be relatively quickly moved by fire equipment. The cycle stands are bolted in, but they're not within that zone of concern. Yeah.
So I mean, you could have a very big cargo bike attached to it.
Theoretically, yes, you could do, yeah, but that's also quite easily removable.
And all the other seating areas? I mean...
most of the seating areas are licensed and removable. There are some that are unlicensed at the moment, going through similar concerns. So there are some that are at the moment unremovable.
And this structure could still be moved if it was needed to be.
As the applicant has said, with a competent scaffolder, it could probably be removed within 2 hours. That would require a competent scaffolder to be there on site at the time. So that's where the original concern came from, the fact that it's not ultimately easily removable and swiftly movable. If it were movable, such as having wheels on it, it would be a different matter.
I just see one strip with everything, the planters and everything, keeping everything down to this one strip, and it just seems that we're picking on one business when, if it wasn't for the seating areas and the closure of the road, we'd be having possibly double parking with vans, large SUVs, all kinds of stuff, which again could cause a problem. Okay, thanks for your answers.
Can we stick to questions, please, now? Councillor Stone.
Hi, yeah, thanks very much. I just wanted to know, in the last few years, how difficult has it been to clean and cleanse the area currently?
It hasn't been possible, is my understanding. My colleagues in highways maintenance have not been able to access that area to clean underneath.
Can you clarify, just underneath or around it?
Excuse me. It's straightforward to clean around it. It's underneath that's the issue.
Any other questions?
Councillor Durston. That was my first one.
Can I give Councillor Durston a chance, please, and then I'll move back here.
Thank you. It's just a question about in the images on slide 5, the planters that are like directly outside of the structure that kind of go a little bit onto the road, do they belong to Bravas, or are they? Yeah, okay. And then in terms of the concerns around accessibility, particularly for people with mobility issues, is that on the pavement side? Because I can see in one of those images you've got a kind of narrowed walkway.
Yeah.
But is that something that could potentially be overcome with conditions, or kind of working with the applicant to address those issues?
So at the moment, the issue in terms of the accessibility, is, as well as the chairs that are on the footway, which can be easily resolved, is the overhang of the guy ropes, which form part of the structure. So it slightly overhangs, and the guy ropes in particular are hanging over the highway. So whether that could be something that could be contingent. I need to point out probably that regardless of planning permission here, it would still have to go through highway structural approval. So it is something that could be resolved through our highway structures.
Okay. Could that not have been resolved with highways without coming to?
It's difficult to answer that. So
I think John. Did you want to comment, Jonathan?
I was just going to just add, if I may, the reason why this is before us this evening is because of the structure, and that's considered to be development in planning terms. So we've got two kind of separate regimes that are operating here. So we are considering this in terms of the operational development, essentially. So, but yeah, as my colleague has mentioned, there is a separate Highways Authority approval process as well that will follow.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shabalala. Councillor Stone after that.
Thanks, Chair. Just looking at the policies that were looked at here. So Bristol Development Plan, and I'm just trying to see what is the support that's given to businesses in terms of a design guide. Do they have a design guide for what they should do? So,
well, in terms of design, we consulted the application with sort of urban design officers. But I do appreciate that design is subjective, and that was the opinion of those officers. But yeah, I mean, on the design as well, and the reason for a refusal, that is the impact on conservation. I think out of all the reasons, that's probably the one that we felt, were it to be the sole reason for refusal, I think that could probably be resolved fairly easily. It was obviously included because there was other reasons, and it seemed more appropriate to look at them in more detail. But in terms of the design, I do feel that is something that could quite easily be overcome. And therefore, moving forward, maybe that's something that could be done. It's essentially not as big of an issue as the other reasons, I would say. So
there is no set design guide.
Yeah, that's correct. Essentially, there isn't any specific sort of design guide that applies to structures in this area. So yeah, we are just considering this application sort of in the normal way. And yeah, the design assessment is obviously set out in the report.
Thank you. And based on the area that you've marked around here, how many other applications have you had before that are seeking similar things? Just so we can understand how you've gone about decision when there isn't a guide.
In terms of this application, I'm not aware of any that are sort of that similar. Certainly not in that area, I don't think. I might be wrong, but I've never come across them myself. I did have a look, so this is a bit of a kind of new application in that sense, I guess.
Thank you. And in terms of the road closure, or the pedestrianisation of it, I was trying to find the equalities impact assessment that would then maybe describe some of the foreseeable potential risks of businesses doing X, Y, and Z, whatever mitigations that you have. I couldn't find one. Is there one?
Is that in terms of when the road was pedestrianised?
Yeah, so you'd have an equalities impact assessment.
Yeah, we did that because I was responsible for pedestrianising it, so it was done at the time.
Right, okay, so there is one.
So it's not within the report to better understand the equalities impact assessments of pedestrianisation, wheelchair users, shops. It's not there to really understand the full impact. And yeah, that's my last one. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Stone.
It's very. It's just picked up from Councillor Breckles. I just want to be sure. Okay, yeah. I want to make sure that the. Do you know that the pipe, the water pipe, are you sure that it is directly under the structure?
We've had verbal confirmation from South West Water, and I believe they've provided formal written comments that they have concerns about the location. You don't know exactly where it is until you actually dig, but at the moment that's where it would be.
Yeah, but I want to just clarify that for the rest of the committee, so you're not actually sure that it's actually right underneath that structure, and therefore it could not. You know, the reason for refusal of this is again it's subjective.
I wouldn't say subjective, but it's certainly reducing the risk. I mean, we have a plan showing that it's beneath the highway on that side of the road. If it's towards the centre of the road, then it may need to be moved anyway.
Councillor Shabalala.
Thank you. So, in terms of the Avon fire, once they were on site, there was a different approach to it versus not being on site. So have all those that need to be on site been on site to actually do the measurements, or has this been more of a desk approach?
Well, I've taken a sort of desk approach to this because, as with most applications, we base decisions on plans. As far as I'm aware, the reason for the sort of change in the sort of opinion of the fire service was the arrangement of the seats has been somewhat changed, which is fine, and so that's why I think their opinion was changed at the last minute. But yeah, so as far as we've conducted most of our, well, certainly for me, has been mostly desk based, as it is with most.
Thank you.
And actually, what we are approving here or not approving are the drawings that have been submitted to the local planning authority, so there could be something different on site when anyone went down. When I've been down there twice, and there's been different things down there. It is useful to meet on site though, and it would have been very helpful, I think, if Councillor Ed Plowden, who is in charge of transport for the city, could have met with you on site.
Councillor, he's not here to actually.
No, he's not. But I'm just saying, the meeting on site is a wonderful idea.
Councillor Alexander, I don't think you should be bringing up a councillor that's not in the room.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can you not do that? Thanks. It would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. It would have been helpful if all parties had met on site and tried to resolve this down there. You could have had your group meeting down there, because you're open to the accusation to a certain extent. It's a bit of a political campaign which didn't need to happen here, actually, because, as has been said, the Highways Authority have the total power to remove this or to allow it to stay, regardless of the planning or local planning authority. We may look at design and we may approve this, we may not, but it will be the Highways Authority that now makes the decision. So you can still have that meeting on site and that discussion with Councillor Plowden or whoever you consider to be the responsible person of transport. Any further questions? No? Then let us move to the discussion. Councillor Breckles.
Thank you. I mean, this strikes me as one of those cases where decision seems to be made to refuse planning permission for something regardless, even if the evidence then changes. And it's not a good look, because it makes the council look petty and vindictive. Even if Fire and Rescue have withdrawn their objection because they accept that the width of the road is wide enough, and that should have been the end of the matter. Add to that, we don't actually know where the water pipes are under the road. Again, a definitive map, they're right underneath. This structure would have mattered. Post-COVID, post-Brexit, and after 14 years of austerity, life is still tough for businesses, and we need to be doing all we can to support them, not throwing obstacles in their way. We need to be letting genies out of the lamps, not welding the lamps shut. So I will not be supporting the officer recommendation, and I will be voting to grant permission, as I believe reasonable conditions can be used to manage any outstanding issues.
Okay, anyone else would like to make any comments? Councillor Shabalala, then Councillor Gooch.
Firstly, I think this what's exciting here is the number of submissions done by the public. Yeah. I think this shows what community power can look like and does look like. And so I'd really recommend that one and say this is really good step forward. In terms of what we are seeing from a business versus planning approach, I think it's definitely clear that planning can suggest one thing, but the business environment can suggest another. And sometimes we do need to be agile, but be agile in a way that can be scalable, so that we're providing a template for many and not just a template for the few, bespoke measures. And if some of those guidance are available, businesses are able to make decisions that ensure their sustainability, but equally mean that they have more sustainability in hiring and keeping staff, which is really important right now, especially with all the business rates going up. So I think personally, I would support this recommendation. I support the applicant, sorry, not the recommendation. I support the applicant. But I think if we do need to consider any conditions, that would be something that we can discuss. But yeah, on the surface, really do approve the applicants.
Thank you. I mean, there are obviously various safety issues which have been highlighted quite correctly by Transport Development Management, and I'm sure Councillor Plowden will want to take those into consideration when he has that discussion with you. Councillor Stone. Oh, Councillor Stafford Townsend? Councillor Townsend, I apologise.
Townsend.
Yes, I apologise.
Thank you. I mean, I think to sort of answer some of your points or respond to some of those, we have had some issues with outside structures in other locations across the city historically. So it's good, and whilst this doesn't make a precedent, I think it's good to see that we're finally getting clarity with this one. And I think we can trust Councillor Plowden to do what he needs to do from a highways perspective, now that we've kind of dealt with, or will hopefully deal with, this particular part of it this evening. It's pedestrianised, using public realm for uses such as this in order to cultivate a thriving high street is our desired outcome for the city. And you know, Cotham Hill is an absolute gem in our city, and I personally really love Bravas. It's brilliant, brilliant restaurant. So, and I love Cotham Hill as a whole. So I'm, again, like my colleagues, will not be voting for the officer recommendation, but will be voting for this to be given permission. And frankly, it's wild that it's taken us this long to get to this point, but I'm very glad that after tonight we will get to a conclusion and Bravas and Cotham Hill can just get on with doing what they do best, which is making amazing food.
Which is getting the highways licence from Councillor Plowden. Let us not forget what we're doing here. Councillor Gooch?
Yes, I would have to, again, also disagree with the recommendation. I disagree with the statement that the seating arrangement appears incongruous and out of keeping with the surrounding things, and appears bulky and creates a crowded street scene, it says in here. It adds to a vibrant street scene, in my opinion. I think it's been a really good use of a small amount of space. And my main reservations were about the access to the fire brigade. So I'm very glad that the fire brigade feel that they can access everything safely. The water, well, we don't know. So I think in this case, I would say that the public benefit outweighs the objections.
Thank you. Any further comments, or can we move to a vote? Okay, in that case, I will propose the officer recommendation, which is to refuse. Do I have a seconder? No. Okay, then I will ask for an alternative. What we're going to. My brain's going. We're going to defer.
Can I?
Defer, are we? One moment, Councillor Breckles.
You've got to go in 10. I know. We should hurry up.
Okay. Having clarified our procedure, we have an alternative, which is a motion which has some conditions on it, which as officers have kindly and professionally drafted for us, which obviously covers the planning side of this project. Jonathan, would you like to elaborate, please?
Thank you, Chair. So just to try and assist the committee at this stage, I mean, if a motion to grant permission were to be proposed, I think from just listening to the discussion and also the issues that the officers have in mind, we would be advising that conditions regarding the maintenance and the management of the structure should be considered to include arrangements for how services would be accessed in the event that they need to be. Also just in terms of the upkeep of the structure as well, and also just picking up again on the revised position of the Fire Authority and just ensuring how the width that has now been agreed will be maintained in operation, and just kind of what other things may be able to be put in place to assist with that, such as keep clear markings and signage and things. So and we would also suggest as well an advice note regarding the need to go through the other statutory approvals process that's been referred to under the Highways Act as well. I think just kind of given the situation we're in and the very kind of sort of late comment that we had, we'd also just request delegated authority just to finalise those matters as well, if that were acceptable.
Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, well done. I'd like to propose a motion to grant as applied for.
Without any conditions?
Without any conditions. Can we test that, please, Chair?
I'll second that.
And focus, yeah. Sorry, Chair, you have to take the motion now that I proposed it and I've got a second.
Please don't tell me what I have to do, Councillor. Allow me to consult and get the process correct. It's for everybody's benefit, all right? Fabian, I have a watch as well. I can multitask. Right. Okay, so we have a proposal then from Councillor Townsend, which is to approve without conditions. So this is from the local planning authority. It doesn't cover any of the other bases, obviously, that's necessary, which is possibly unwise. But anyway, you're proposing that. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Breckles. Okay. Well, I will go round then. Councillor Townsend.
4.
Councillor Stone.
4.
Councillor McGraby.
4.
Councillor Shabalala.
4.
Councillor Gooch.
4.
Councillor Badruddin. 4. Councillor Durston.
4.
Councillor Breckles.
4.
Thank you, and I will abstain. That is then passed. Thank you. We now have a 5-minute break, which takes us to 1958 we begin the next one. Thank you. No, they can't participate. If they're not back, they can't participate. So the next item is 2402736/P, Land at Home Gardens, Redland Hill, Bristol, BS6 6UR. And the first statement, Mr. Tim Spencer. Mr. Spencer, carry on.
I've been asked to stand in for Tim Spencer, who had an accident.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yes. It has been cleared by the officers, apparently.
Yeah, it's cleared by me as well, even more important.
I'm speaking then on behalf of Pegasus Homes, who are the owners of the Vincent and the proposed access to the development. Minor changes have been made to the design of the application, but do not address the reasons for the previous refusal or the appeal decision. The north part of the building is both higher and larger, and the distance to the cottages 7 and 9 St Vincent's Hill is largely unchanged, and the nominally increase in the setback to the south is inconsequential. The closer proximity to the Vincent and the increased height give rise to a range of additional adverse amenity impacts. Consultation responses from Historic England, from Bristol Waste, from Nature Conservation and City Transport have left unresolved concerns. Construction access through the violent is a major concern for our vulnerable people. Despite the requests at the previous committee, there's been no discussion relating to the construction management plan. So overall, this is an ill-conceived application which makes no real attempt to mitigate the significant harms of the previous application, of the former application, and we ask you to refuse it.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. Mr. Johnson, Steve Johnson.
Thank you. As a resident of the Vincent, it is important to clarify two claims made by the applicant. Firstly, the suggestion that this meeting should consider only changes made to address the planning inspector's findings in relation to the cottages. This is incorrect. We are considering a new application, the changes impacting on residents of both the cottages and the Vincent. Changes to massing, height and reorientation of Block B will leave Queen Victoria House apartments directly overlooked, with loss of privacy and amenity. Secondly, the claim that only outline permission is sought now to permit consultation on appearance and detail later should be viewed in relation to the experience of the past 4.5 years. We have no expectation of any meaningful consultation at later stages. I ask the committee to refuse this application.
Ms. Marion Reid.
I am a resident of the Vincent. Following refusal of the previous application by the planning inspector on the basis of scale, height, mass and siting of the proposed building, unbelievably, the developer has increased the height of Block B from 5 to 6 stories. This increases the overbearing impact and harm to the amenity of the cottages, which alone is sufficient reason to refuse this application. But by also moving Block P further towards Queen Victoria House, it increases overlooking and loss of privacy for its residents, adding to the detrimental impact on living conditions, loss of enjoyment, loss of amenities for the Vincent residents. For my own apartment, Block B will take light, and the balconies and windows will actually overlook my bedroom. For these reasons, I ask you to refuse this application.
Thank you. Mr. Ray Lockhart.
I also am one of the residents of the Vincent and most affected by the proposed development. My apartment directly faces Block B, whose height has now been increased from 5 to 6 stories. Inevitably, this means a significant reduction of light. But in addition, Block B also has been reorientated towards and nearer Queen Victoria House. This allows occupants of the block to have a direct and unimpeded view from their windows and balconies, not only into our living space, but also directly into our bedroom. For me and my wife, there will be a considerable loss of privacy and consequent reduced enjoyment of the apartment. And I speak also for my neighbours. They would similarly be affected. Inevitably, Block B will have a detrimental impact on our living conditions, along with the general amenity of our apartments. And for these reasons, I ask you to refuse the application.
Thank you. Ms. Marion Barclay.
It's Mrs. Stella Barclay, actually. Thank you.
Oh, I do apologise. I don't know how that happened.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I too live at the Vincent, and I'm asking the committee to refuse this application. The average age of Vincent residents is 84. Many of them use walking aids or have visual or hearing impairments. The only access to this site is through Pegasus Homes car park, not, as claimed, an unadopted shared road. All entrants to the site cross this area. It is, at 2 points, barely 5 metres wide, with a blind bend outside Queen Victoria House Rest door. Data provided previously indicates construction vehicle movements in excess of 12,000. Clearly, heavy vehicles and pedestrians in the same area present a seriously high risk. Significantly, the applicant has not resubmitted a construction management plan to address this. Their previous one was judged unfit for purpose. The planning inspector did recognise this and emphasised that the involvement of Pegasus with their duty of care for all car park users should be required. The exceptional circumstances would avoid creating any precedent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chris Seddon.
Thank you, Chair. I also live at the Vincent and ask the committee to refuse this application. My wife has a serious mobility impairment and is highly vulnerable. She will be fearful of using the car park to reach local amenities for the reasons mentioned. There are a number of other residents at the Vincent with similar mobility and sight impairments, and fearing conflict with those heavy construction vehicles, they will be effectively confined to their homes, with consequent significant impact on amenity and on living conditions, both during and after the construction period. We ask the committee to consider the exceptional circumstances and risks for vulnerable residents. Should the final decision be approved, then as the landowner with a duty of care for all car park users, Pegasus Homes must be consulted and be party to any agreed construction management plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Irene Buckley.
I live at the Vincent. This is simply the resubmission of the previous application refused by the planning inspector in the strongest terms. Applicant makes exaggerated claims for changes which fail to address the inspector's concerns relating to height and mass of Block B overlooking the cottages in St Vincent's Hill. To increase the building from 5 to 6 stories is to add to the inspector's concerns and will add to loss of privacy for both the cottages and Queen Victoria House residents. This impacts negatively on the living conditions and amenity of residents. This is a major housing development in a prime location. It is a poor quality, high density development with too many small apartments. There is a lack of family housing amenity space. Does the applicant have student letting in mind? I ask the committee to refuse the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Kay Cross.
I have lived at the Vincent for 5 years. I have enjoyed both the vibrancy of the city together with the calm, safe environment of the Vincent community. After the previous planning hearing and 4.5 years after the first application, a meeting was finally held between the developer, residents and councillors, with the meeting led by a PR firm appointed by the developer. We were led to believe the developer would put forward proposals, but after 1 hour of PR speak, the developer finally admitted there would be no changes whatsoever to the application. This was not a consultation. The meeting was no more than window dressing and going through the motions, an exercise with today's planning hearing in mind. Nothing has changed since the last meeting, except we now have the planning officer's comprehensive statement of reasons for refusals. I ask this committee to support the officer's reasons for refusal statement and to refuse this application.
Thank you. Peter Back, Mr. Peter Back.
Previous meeting refused to approve this application, asked officer for a statement setting out reasons for refusal. The statement, though, does not quite or adequately set out 2 main reasons which prompted the refusal. First, increasing Block B from 5 to 6 stories totally fails to address planning inspector's serious concerns regarding height and mass of the building and its impact and harm to the cottages below. An additional story must and can only add to those concerns, and there's reason enough in itself to refuse this permission. But secondly, moving Block B nearer and more directly in front of Queen Victoria House creates new planning issues and breaches. There will now be 37 windows, yes, 37 windows and 8 balconies, from which Block B occupants will have the direct and unimpeded view into living rooms and bedrooms of Vincent residents. They will suffer overlooking, loss of light, loss of privacy, loss of amenity. Each of these factors are enough in itself for refusal. I ask you to refuse this application.
Thank you. Tina Moon.
Christina Moon, resident at the Vincent. To some extent, mine is a summary position because in refusing to overturn last time to support the application, the planning inspector used incredibly powerful language describing the 5-storey building as towering, looming and foreboding in relation to the cottages. In seemingly addressing, in inverted commas, these concerns, there's been a setback of that building, but only by 5 metres, 1 car length. The building, as we've heard repeatedly, has gone from 5 stories to 6, thus increasing its impact of towering, looming and foreboding. As we've heard, in reorientating it round and turning it, a new problem has been created, one of direct view and access into people's bedrooms, into people's lounges. Given that 2 elevations overlook the Vincent, it also now intrudes on the gardens. Our concern is that the consequence of these changes is not one of improvement, but one of detriment, impacting on privacy and well-being of the residents at both the cottages and at the Vincent. Our contention is the developer has not only failed to address the planning inspector's concerns regarding the cottages, but it has created further negative impact on Queen Victoria House and residents. In summary, our concerns are that previous concerns have not been addressed and that new ones have been created. I therefore ask the committee to refuse this application.
Thank you. Kian Tusi.
Good evening, councillors. At October's committee meeting, you gave us some very clear feedback. You wanted us to address the concerns of our neighbours. I'm pleased to say that we were able to meet the ward councillors and the neighbours, and we've made two key commitments. Firstly, to involve them in the drafting of the construction management plan, a move that they've welcomed. And secondly, to hold a design workshop with our neighbours for our reserved matters application. As a local family business set up by our hard-working parents, we have been a part of this community for decades. We actually spent 2 years consulting our neighbours before the 2021 application. This was before anyone lived in the Vincent. Unhelpfully, it appears that the new residents were not made aware of our live application when they bought their homes. And we really sincerely hope that the history of the planning application and the consultations are noted by the officers and the committee members. However, we do look forward to building a dialogue with what we started and working respectfully with our neighbours despite the negative reaction to our willingness to engage and have a positive contribution.
Thank you. The next person is Sarah Tusi, and I would ask members of the public to show respect for those who are speaking. They didn't do that to you, so please show some respect. Sarah Tusi, please.
Good evening, councillors. As my brother Keon said, our offer to involve our neighbours in preparing our construction management plan was welcomed. We can prepare this when we appoint a main contractor. The vehicle access to our existing buildings, including for bin collection, is via the Vincent's main driveway. This access was also used for construction when the Vincent was being built, which, even though our existing buildings were fully occupied, was well managed, proving it is more than adequate and can be done safely. By working with the Vincent's residents and management on our construction management plan, we can ensure any impact is minimised. This could include site personnel walking trucks into and out of the site as suggested by one councillor. Please be assured that, just like Pegasus Homes was able to do, we will manage construction in a way that is safe and respectful of our neighbours. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. David Perkin.
Good evening, councillors.
Good evening.
As this project's architect, can I briefly update you, please, on the changes we've made to reduce the impact on neighbouring properties? In terms of numbers 7 and 9 St Vincent's Hill, we've reduced the height of the closest part of the new building by 1.5 metres. We've also pushed that building back 5 metres, so it is now at least 23 metres from number 9 and 30 metres from number 7. And we've split that building now, so half faces away from those two houses. These are major changes. While some residents of the Vincent also have concerns, their apartments are much further away, and the closest actually face a different direction. I'm not dismissing the concerns of the Vincent residents, but this redevelopment will replace a view of a car park and some pretty poor quality buildings with well-designed buildings set in green and attractive grounds. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Charlotte Manning.
I just want to start by saying I live at number 9. My neighbour Audrey lives at number 7. We have never, ever been consulted by the applicants. As mentioned when we were here in October, we support thoughtful development, especially when it delivers quality housing and improves an area. But this application does the opposite. It would replace single and 2-storey buildings in a conservation area with bulky 5- and 6-storey blocks that are completely out of scale. As owners of 9 St Vincent's Hill, a Grade 2 listed home and a heritage asset, we would be directly and severely affected. Building B would actually sit less than 15 metres from our cottage, towering over it, stripping away light, all privacy and outlook. The previous application was rejected for exactly these reasons. The inspector described it as a building of significant bulk and height that would tower over the skyline and create a foreboding relationship with neighbouring cottages. These issues all remain, and in some respects have worsened, certainly for our neighbours at the Vincent. This application conflicts with policies BCS 21 and DM 29 and fails to respect the conservation area. Even Historic England have raised concerns. This scheme would cause lasting harm to our homes, to residents and to the historic character of the area, and we urge you to reject it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Serena Ralston.
Make no mistake, since this application last appeared before you, nothing has changed. It has the same fundamental problems and it still needs to be refused. You voted by a majority to refuse it, but the decision was deferred to allow time to propose grounds for refusal. Officers have brought back a report with advice, but are still recommending approval. This deferral process is nonsensical. The report identifies the negative impacts of the development on the occupiers of 7 and 9 St Vincent's Hill cottages as potential grounds for refusal. This is because the planning inspector dismissed the applicant's appeal on these grounds for the previous application. But the report then says that the new application resolves these impacts. This is simply not the case. The revised Block B building occupies a largely unchanged position on the site. The change in the distance between it and the cottages is insignificant. On a sloping site, this block will still tower over 7 and 9. In addition, this application creates new detrimental effects on the Vincent, which this committee must consider. Residents are keen to see this site developed for housing. After the previous application was refused, the applicants could have worked with residents on a scheme that fits the space. Had this happened, work might have started by now. The applicants had one meeting last month with residents and us ward councillors. Engagement too little, too late, offering no opportunities for change.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. In the meantime, please stand firm and refuse this application.
Thank you. Audrey Remmert.
Chair and members, I'm Hugo Armitage speaking on behalf of Audrey Remmert, who's very sorry she can't be here today. In Audrey's words, I live at number 7 St Vincent's Hill. I'm here because this decision drastically affects my home and life. The planning inspector dismissed the previous scheme because Block B was bulky and overbearing. She said it would create a, quote, foreboding sense of enclosure, close quote, over number 7 and 9. That judgment was not about a marginal daylight figure. It was about relationship and scale. A 5 to 6 storey building dominating modest 2-storey Grade 2 listed cottages which sit lower on the slope of this site. No storey has been removed. The building is still 5 to 6 storeys high. It shifted slightly, but it still towers above us. The dominance remains. The sense of enclosure remains. That lived experience of feeling closed in on and our amenities harmed has not changed. And now the conditions and outlook at the Vincent have worsened.
10 seconds, please.
Because of this poorly reconsidered plan. We met with the developers in good faith a few weeks ago, hoping for meaningful compromise. We were told it was too late to make changes. That is not genuine engagement.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Nick Mize, I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name.
Nick Mize.
Oh, I've got it right. Thank you, Nick.
Good evening, councillors. I'm also a local resident and live near this site. I support the application because I believe it will improve the appearance of this section of White Ladies Road. As one of Bristol's most prominent high streets, very close to the Downs, and given the paucity of new housing, it seems a logical usage to me. We heard in the previous application about the importance of supporting new businesses. Well, the people that attend and spend money need somewhere to live. Being blunt, the current entrance and arrangement is rather unattractive, and I believe this development would transform the appearance. And moreover, I'd hate to see another brownfield site underutilised, especially when people are living in vans literally in front of it.
Thank you very much. Roland George Harrod.
Good evening, councillors. My name is Roland Harrod. I'm a Bristolian, born and raised, and fully support this application. We all know Bristol has a housing crisis. It's a great relief to see a proposal that includes affordable housing and that isn't student accommodation. This rarely happens in Redland, and the affordable homes will be a welcome news for the nursing and ancillary staff at the neighbouring hospital. I walk past this site most days. There are already a number of larger buildings surrounding it, including the Vincent. Of course, the Vincent proposal faced considerable opposition, including from neighbours whose homes were as close as 18 metres away. But the Vincent is fantastic, with beautiful grounds and attractive 5-storey buildings. Like the Vincent, I believe the proposed development is an excellent proposal and a great use of a car park sandwiched between a petrol station and a large office block. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe that's all of the public forum now, so I'm going to hand over to Anna for a modest presentation, well, not in quality, in length.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. So, as a reminder, this application was presented to this committee in October last year with an officer recommendation for approval. The committee resolved that the decision was deferred to allow for members to review grounds for refusal, with officers to provide that advice. Notwithstanding the recommendation to approve and having regard to matters raised during the previous debate, these here are the 2 potential grounds for refusal that the committee may wish to consider. But commentary within this presentation will be provided as to why it's considered that these matters have been resolved. Further to this, the application is a resubmission and a revised proposal following the refused scheme back in 2021. The application was refused on these 2 grounds: harm to residents at the Vincent by virtue of the access from Redland Hill, and also the overbearing harm to residents of number 7 and number 9 St Vincent's Hill. It was refused and subsequently appealed to the inspectorate, who concluded that the only reason to refuse the scheme was due to the harm to the living conditions of occupiers at 7 and 9 St Vincent's Hill by virtue of scale and proximity. The reason for refusal related to access and the Vincent were considered to not warrant refusal by the inspector. This followed a cost appeal made against the council for this, whereby the inspector stated it was unreasonable conclusion reached to the decision to refuse on these impacts. It's therefore heavily emphasised that this appeal decision should be given considerable weight as a previous plan decision. It would be unreasonable if undue influence was given to an objection that the inspector has stated is acceptable. It's clear within the planning practice guidance, which states that persisting in objections which an inspector has previously indicated to be acceptable is unreasonable behaviour that would give rise to a cost awards, so it's advised that there is significant risk in doing that. So fundamentally, the summary of the 4 key considerations and the main concerns raised in the debate in October are stated here, 3 of which relate to the impacts to the Vincent and 1 relating to the impacts of 7 and 9 St Vincent's Hill. So firstly, here you can see how Block B is now proposed to be split into 2 separate but linking building elements. This has resulted in this section of Block B closest to St Vincent's Hill to be specifically designed and tailored to reduce those impacts. The width of the block that runs parallel to the rear boundary of the garden serving 7 and 9 has reduced by 6 metres. The whole block has shifted westerly, resulting in a greater angle and distance from 7 and 9. The inspector refers to proximity in his decision. So in response, the whole block has shifted a total of 5 metres away from these two buildings, with the middle linking element that you can see here located further away than the previous development by approximately 13 metres. Furthermore, Block B is set back at 4th floor by approximately 7.2 metres away from 7 and 9, St Vincent's Hill. So even more of those overbearing sense of enclosure impacts are alleviated with a total pushback of that 5 metres and this 4th floor 7th metre setback. This slide depicts the separation distances between the existing and the proposed buildings. The distances will range between 36 metres and 26 metres. Officers often tend to refer to this rule of thumb figure of 21 metres wall to wall, which you can see that this is well over. It's recognised that there are smaller distances between the rear gardens and numbers 7 and 9 and Block B. However, this is mitigated by the revisions proposed in this application, as well as proposed landscape buffer between the buildings, which will be a reserved matter. Here's just some more imagery of the existing site that the 7 and 9 are looking at and what it would appear as. Secondly, the next 3 issues related to the Vincent. Here you can see that this is in relation to construction period for the development. The development would result in a period of demolition and construction by which proposed route to the site would be through the Vincent car park. This is identical to that proposed previously, whereby the inspector found it would not warrant refusal. The inspector stated that securing a construction management plan, or CMP, would be capable of addressing the health and safety concerns of those residents. The CMP would be submitted through an application to the planning authority and require formal approval, and the applicant has agreed to work with the residents of the Vincent in the creation of this CMP. There's also a potential that this can be reviewed during the development of the CMP, utilising White Ladies Road to crane materials into the site. But highlighting the appeal decision once again as a material consideration, the imposition of this CMP via condition was considered acceptable, with costs awarded against the council for this previous decision on this basis. So upon occupation impact to the Vincent, the existing site contains approximately 30 parking spaces which use the exact same access. Secondly, within the previous application, 30 parking spaces were also proposed to serve the development, and the inspector found that this was acceptable and the access sufficient and would not result in harm to the safety of the existing users of the Vincent car park. Again, costs were awarded against the council for reaching this decision, concluding it was unreasonable and unfounded. The total proposed car parking spaces within this current application has reduced significantly to 10 spaces, so even less vehicle movement, traffic and congestion, which will result, compared to this previous scheme and also the existing situation. And finally, any overbearing impacts felt from residents of the Vincent. Crucially, this was never raised as an objection within any previous applications by the council nor the inspector. Both found that the development sufficiently safeguarded the amenity of the residents of the Vincent in terms of the development scale, bulk and proximity. Here on this slide, you can see the previous scheme as this sort of purple dotted line. In order for the proposal to resolve the one reason for refusal by moving and shifting that massing away from 7 and 9 St Vincent's Hill, the proposal has increased the height of the block closest to the Vincent, but this is only by 1.5 metres. Crucially, the inspector and the council found that there would be no harmful overbearing impacts on any amenity areas, external or internal, of the Vincent. Therefore, this minor revision to the block, specifically the 1.5 metre increase in height, is not considered material or substantial enough to overturn that conclusion. Furthermore, due to the orientation of the block, the building elevation runs parallel to the boundary with the gardens of the Vincent, at only half a metre closer in proximity than the previous development. Separation distances between the proposed block and the Vincent would be 27 metres at the closest point, which is way over any 21 metre sort of rule of thumb target distance. So to conclude with that in mind, the appeal decision as a material consideration, as well as the minor revisions to Block B, it's considered that no overbearing impacts would arise for residents of the Vincent to warrant refusal on these grounds. So to conclude, the application is a revised scheme whereby the overbearing impacts to number 7 and 9 St Vincent's Hill were the main concerns. The changes proposed are considered to be material and considerable in order to resolve the inspector's comments. We recognise that there is going to be some impact, which is expected in an urbanised area such as this, but the benefits of this scheme, such as the delivery of 60 units with 20% affordable, is considered to significantly outweigh and offset these impacts. It's therefore recommended still for approval, subject to conditions and 106. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. After the inspector's findings and the awarding of costs against us, there are a limited number of things really for us to consider here. So I hope that we'll have some questions that will focus on just those things. Councillor Townsend.
Thank you. Yeah, I've just got one question because I feel like I'm in Groundhog Day. I sat in your chair back in 21 when this committee under a different councillor makeup deferred it pending rejection, and then it was ultimately followed by rejecting it. Lots of resident engagement and objections and councillor objections. And then this same committee is considering it again. It deferred it at the last committee pending reasons for refusal, and it's here again with a recommendation to approve. And from what I've seen, and I've looked at this plan, it hasn't materially changed. Nothing has changed between the last committee where this application was refused and now. It still is not satisfying BS 21 or 29. So, and I know this seems like a statement, not a question, but the question is, like, riddle me this, why is it still recommended for approval by officers when this council, the councillors on this committee, in this makeup and previous makeups, have repeatedly rejected it? Why are you still recommending it for approval when you've been asked to bring up reasons to reject it strongly and efficiently at appeal?
Do you accept that sometimes there aren't reasons to refuse it because it is compliant with our policies? Do you accept that something could be compliant with our policies and there are no reasons to refuse it?
I do, but the report itself says that there are reasons to refuse it. You've been directed to find reason to refuse it robustly, and yet the report is written in such a way that actually backs us into a corner rather than officers doing the will of this committee, which is to find reasons to reject it robustly.
Okay, you can always throw good money after bad at the inspector, but I'll hand over to Jonathan here.
Thanks. Yeah, just to, if I can assist just from a procedural perspective, I mean, there haven't been any changes to the development since it was considered towards the end of last year that would warrant a change to the officer recommendation to approve. But what we have done following the deferral is provided an update report, which is in accordance with the resolution. It provides advice around potential reasons for refusal. Those are set out. There are two there that are mentioned, but as part of the deferral process, obviously we have to advise the committee as to the likelihood of the success of those reasons. And I think as the case officer has set out, there are very clear grounds as to why we really don't feel that those reasons would stand up to scrutiny at appeal. And there is also potentially significant risk with regard to some of those concerns in terms of the authority being exposed to an award of costs against it. So, you know, we are duty bound really to highlight that risk.
Mm-hmm. The problem is that when you write a report that a lot of planning, it's not black and white, it's a grey area. And you've been instructed by this committee, and I wasn't sat on this committee last time it was seen, but you were instructed to find the parts of this application where it can be refused, not strengthen the reasons for the applicant to win at appeal, which, reading this report, is what you've done, which is counter to what the committee has asked you to do.
There is a thing out there called reality. It's not just about a narrative. You know, you cannot just hunt for a reason. Officers have done their utmost to hunt for reasons where there aren't any. And that's been made clear to you by the officers and by the inspector and by an award of costs against this local planning authority. Now, if you want to go down that road again and throw away more good money after bad, then of course you're entitled. But you can't expect officers to give you the reasons to do that.
There are very clear reasons that it could be rejected upon.
Councillor Stone.
I was going to ask a question about the application. The applicant is actually bringing forward 12 homes, which is great, that are affordable, in this area. However, considering affordable in this area, because it was alluded to by a member of the public that people in vans or possibly nurses would be able to reside in this particular establishment. Affordable, actually, as in a monetary affordable, which is what it is, and it's not a social housing affordable. Can you just clarify whether or not you think a van dweller would be able to afford the rents in this particular application?
Well, I don't really think we can comment on that other than to say in terms of the affordable housing that would be secured, that would be affordable housing in accordance with the MPPF, in accordance with the recognised definitions. We've consulted with our housing enabling team. They are satisfied with what's proposed, and we would secure that through a Section 106 agreement in the normal way.
If I may just add, I think, am I right in saying this is social rent affordable housing, not affordable rent? So it's social rent, it's the amount that is set, and the allocation would be happening by our housing team, and so who needs it most gets allocated, and it's, I suppose, the genuine affordable housing that you can get.
Well, thanks for that, because the actual report didn't say that initially when the presenter of the officer, when she was going through the actual, she didn't say that.
I did ask her to keep it short, but it was in the report, obviously, which you would have read, I expect.
Thank you very much for clarifying that it's going to be social rent, which is fabulous. Thank you. I do have another question. That is, there has been a little bit of change, because where the inspectorate has asked for the application to come back because of the reasons for refusal, and they've moved the building in such a way that it actually then demonstrably, affects the Vincent now. So actually, they've managed to fulfil the reasons for refusal on one ground, which is numbers 9 and number 7, and in doing so, you've actually affected quite badly the Vincent. So therefore, this applicant has actually changed, and you did say we shouldn't be looking at those objections, but we have to, because the plan has actually changed.
We're just going to bring up on screen again the plan which shows the changes really in relation to the Vincent, and really these are very minor. As the officer mentioned, we have a 1.5 metre high increase. We're still maintaining a separation distance of 27 metres. And if you can just make out on the slide, there is a purple outline shown, which is essentially the footprint of the scheme that was previously considered, and overlaid kind of with that now is what's proposed. And as you can see, really these are really minor changes.
Yeah, but they're not minor changes to the people who are living in the Vincent, and that's what I want to really clarify here, as we know from the objections from the people living in the Vincent who have come here today.
Yeah, do you have any further questions? Right, thank you. Councillor Shabalala.
Thank you. Can you please just clarify how privacy and lighting has been addressed? Some of the concerns are about privacy. So privacy, from what I believe can be a material consideration, especially from residents' input. Now, from the drawings, yes, you've shown how the sizes have changed and how they've adjusted, but I'd like to understand how then can you prove that that has reduced the privacy concerns that I've heard today?
Yeah, of course. So just to clarify, in terms of the impact to privacy, so overlooking loss of privacy, that was never a concern in this previous application that was refused at council and then refused at appeal stage. It was always about the overbearing sense and that sort of sense of enclosure that those structures have on the neighbouring properties. Overlooking is the level of overlooking, and the windows, the balconies are exactly as proposed as in the previous. So in terms of its relationship with the Vincent and number 7 and number 9, we don't feel that any overlooking concerns would warrant refusal in this situation. And as you can see from the distance, but for example with the Vincent, we've got a 27-metre distance sort of wall to wall, and then again with the relationship with 7 and 9, we feel that's significant enough in this sort of urban area that kind of urban grain is as is within the rest of the vicinity.
So that's the privacy piece. And what about the lighting piece? So because those are the two things that I've heard today, and I'd like to get just a very clear direction of if it's objective or subjective, what you're saying, that because of the distance, therefore, it's now dealt with, or it's because the windows are dim, it's dealt with, or now there's trees, it's dealt with. So I want to just really understand that consideration in terms of privacy and lighting from any other maybe 3D drawing or some other way to really be able to understand it from the visitant residents, from their window counterpart. What does it look like to really be able to understand that? Yeah.
Just while Anna's finding the slide, just say there's a key issue in the previous report, key issue E, which deals with neighbouring amenity, which covers these various aspects of this assessment in detail. But really, the summary of that is, officers consider it to be acceptable. But I don't know if you want to highlight anything further, Anna.
No, just to reiterate that, really, you can this is a visual illustration of what the development would look like in relationship to the neighbouring properties. We are satisfied that there are no harmful impacts to loss of light for the existing dwellings around the property. There's sufficient distancing. The orientations, we're satisfied that is not going to be cause amenity harm to any of those local residents.
Okay, I understand the technical part of it. But we're also dealing with the social part of it, where those in close proximity say something different to what the technical part is saying. And yes, it may be just represented by those that are really in proximity. If the residents were saying that they stayed much further afield from the developments, I'd understand. But these are residents right adjacent to it. So what is that resident engagement approach meant to be like, so that it's genuinely authentic and residents feel like they've had a say and they've been listened to, and therefore they are working together? If you look that side, you've got a divide, so therefore this development in itself creates a divided community from the sense that I'm getting today. Maybe that's not material consideration, or is it?
I think while Jonathan is thinking a bit more about that, what I want to bring it back again to is the distance, where we have a very clear measurement of 27 metres distance to the Vincent. This is 6 metres more than what the guidance says is the minimum distance you need. So substantially more. And that is ultimately what is at the bottom also of lighting, overbearing, all these other sort of impacts. And that's a clear fact that is related in our in policy and in guidance, and that's what it ultimately needs to come back to, because feelings is not something that you can measure or ultimately, objectively assess. And hence, it's important that we bring it back to this is substantially over greater distance than what has to be provided. And where, we have, it has to come back where we as an authority have to be guided by our policy. And if we step away and be inconsistent from what we say in our policy, that's why we will go down on an appeal if we try and refuse it, despite our, despite it being consistent with the guidance.
Councillor Gooch, do you have a question?
Yeah, so I don't think it's actually in the papers, the 25-degree angle, the 45-degree angle is provided in the papers, but we were provided during the presentation, and we've been handed today papers that show there's 25-degree angle from the cottages up to the roof. And while we were standing sort of looking from the cottages, looking up, trying to imagine what it looked like, I found this actually quite helpful. The 25, when you look at the 25-degree angle on these things, there really isn't much difference between the original iteration and now. So I'm not quite sure why that has been put down as having made a material difference.
Apologies, I'm just getting up the right slide to show you.
Again, while Anna's just finding the slide in terms of the 25-degree angle that's been plotted, that refers to the BRE, well, essentially sort of best practice, which is like a recognised industry thing. So it's just really to indicate that in terms of that sort of line of sight, the development would be clear of that.
Yeah, and crucially, just wanted to kind of highlight this slide once again. This on the left is what the previous kind of an illustration of the previous refused application, and here on the right, that which shows that orange line, is just sort of that overlay of what now is proposed. So the key issues that the inspector found with this previous that previous application was a sense of enclosure and those overbearing impacts. So with this proposal now, with that 5-metre full setback, the fourth storey completely shifted away by about 7.4 metres. That reorientation, we now feel that when you're standing in the gardens of number 7 and 9, that those impacts are sufficiently alleviated to safeguard the amenity, and that's the conclusion that we've come to with the help of those. The 25-degree angle diagram that you mentioned previously, but mainly kind of these plans that are shown to us help us to come to this conclusion that it's sufficiently alleviated that kind of sense of overbearing and that kind of enclosure blanket kind of appearance that would occur.
But surely that sense of whether it's overbearing or not is quite subjective. Because that still looks, the one on the right still looks quite overbearing to me.
We've covered this point, really. We can only deal in measurements. And the inspector will deal in measurements. Not going to trade kind of experiences of subjectivity. We have rules, policies, and that's what the inspector will look at. Well, okay, but... right, I'm going to take a couple more questions, but not too much. Al?
Yeah, thanks. So, I like hearing that there's concerns about the side access through Vincent's car park, and I was told that they plan to have a rain on White Ladies road, and I wanted to ask, can they have a crane and industrial size crane on like White Ladies on White Ladies Road, and would they have to would they have to close down that street to make that happen? Cheers. Yeah.
It depends on the size of the crane, doesn't it, really? But certainly you can put a crane on White Ladies Road. It's been done many times before, and it could potentially be part of the construction management plan, which obviously we're not technically qualified to go through that in any detail here. But it's a fair comment, is it, Jane?
Yeah, that's right. With the construction management, we'd look at that a bit later on when they actually know how they're going to construct it. So it doesn't form part of the planning consideration. There is possibility to put cranes on the highway. We'd rather not on White Ladies Road because it's a bus route, but there's a way of getting around it, so it's possible.
Councillor Townsend, and then I'm going to bring things to a close because... All right, Councillor Townsend, a very quick one from you, Fabian, then.
Thank you. Mine's just a quick one. It's following on from Els as well, actually, conveniently. It's about the construction management plan, given the alleged lack of engagement, and certainly the perception of a lack of engagement from the residents of the Vincent, and the construction management will likely need to go through the land of the Vincent. If the owners of the Vincent refuse to give access, is it possible to construct something here?
It wouldn't be something that we consider at planning because it's a land ownership issue, so it would be an access over private land. But I think looking at some of the objections that have been raised and the perceived lack of engagement, there is a possibility of updating the condition to reflect further consultation and further views of the landowners and residents.
Thank you.
Okay, Fabian, and then I think...
Okay, so just want to clarify, the floor heights in the buildings have been reduced because it got an extra floor on one of the blocks, Block B, but it's only 1.5 metres taller. That's because they've reduced the floor heights to more residential proportions.
Exactly that. So that impact is only 1.5 metres in proximity to the Vincent.
And because of everything sort of north facing, the shadowing will be towards the car park area, the remaining car parking spots, not back onto 7 and 9.
Exactly.
And final quickie, how much were the costs awarded against us?
I'll have to find that out, or whether...
Have a look, Anna, and I'll just give Caroline a very quick one.
Yeah, sorry, it's the same thing. It's just I'd zoomed in on the picture on my phone. So Block B is now meets that 25 degrees, but Block C doesn't. Block C still exceeds it from the house, from the cottages.
Anna, that's correct, I presume.
So I just want to clarify. So we still consider that relationship between the number 7 and number 9 and the proposed Block B to have sufficiently resolved that kind of sense of overbearing and sense of enclosure enough to not warrant refusal in this instance. We do feel that it's made material and considerable improvements that really, now that the benefits of the scheme do outweigh any impacts to those residents, and that's our conclusion.
Nobody's saying that there are no negative impacts to anybody. Life isn't like that. There is, on balance, most definitely more positive impacts than there are negative impacts. Now, we move to discussion. Anyone want to make a point? Or shall we move straight to the vote? Oh, sorry, Simone.
Before we go to debate, if I could just point out one more thing.
Yep.
I've noticed the appeal decision is from 2022, so quite some time ago, which means that actually the national planning context has also substantially moved on in the meantime. And it's very much tilted the balance in favour of housing development. It's increased the amount of weight we need to give to housing development because of the the standard method. Our deficit, so to speak, in delivering housing is greater. We don't have a 5-year housing land supply, so that is something I think we also need to bear in mind, that when this comes in front, if it would go in front of an inspector before, who would clearly also consider the national planning context, which is what goes back to the reality that we're facing, that the balance is just strongly skewed in favour of housing.
Thank you. And we lost a significant amount of money last time. That was your committee, Annie. Yep. We are now going to move to the discussion. Councillor Stone, you have a discussion point.
Yeah, I'd just like to sum up a little bit quickly with this discussion. Look, there's been a lot of applications across the city that have been awarded planning, and yet we don't see spades in the ground. You know, I'm not quite sure how serious this application is. That
is not for you to consider. I'm sorry. That is not for you to consider. The applicants have come here in good faith, and you consider it in good faith.
Anyway, okay, so with the lack of engagement that they've had with the residents in the area, that they've only brought outline planning to this committee for whatever reason, and considering it's such a sensitive conservation area, I do find the lack of winning by the applicant it just makes me think seriously about this application. It really does. So I'm still very much. In fact, I might as well just say I'm thinking to refuse it. Thanks.
Councillor Townsend.
Thank you. Well, firstly, just to be clear, the cost of the appeal isn't a material consideration. Previous appeals, a pending one, is not material consideration.
It's a measure of your folly, but it's not material.
It's not a material planning consideration, Chair.
Correct.
So I have concerns about this, because I don't think that the concerns about bulk massing, light, overlooking, and access have been considered or resolved in any way whatsoever. I'm concerned about a lack of engagement with the residents, which has been a recurrent theme on this site, unfortunately. And yeah, I know it's not a material planning consideration, but I do have concerns about their ability to get a construction management plan at all as well, given the relationship that they have with their neighbours. The residents say that they welcome a sensitive development, and they do welcome homes, but with real consultation with them. So I am going to vote to refuse this application, and I hope that the applicant, if they are really truly dedicated to enriching the local community, they return with a different plan, and they proceed with a real tangible engagement with their neighbours, which they have to live side by side with, and so does anybody else that lives there in the future.
Anybody else? Caroline, you got something to say? It's more in tune with reality.
I would love to see this site developed. I really want a good development on this site. There are several buildings here that are in a terrible state of repair, and it's hung around for ages. A lot of it looking derelict. It does need developing, and I really, really want it to be developed. What I am currently trying to weigh up in my mind, and I think this is the point of the discussion element, is weighing up something that overlooks a historic listed building that is single aspect and north facing. So all they have is the one garden, the one side, just looking straight up at this. So it has to be right. And if this had been sort of terraced so that it went down the hillside, I don't think I would have a problem with it. But at the moment, I don't know which way I'm going to vote, because it's not quite enough for me to be sure. So it's a really difficult one, and that's what I want us to discuss, the pros and cons of this, and I think that's what the point of this discussion is supposed to be.
Well, if let me mention the pros. The pros are a lot of social housing in Redland, an area that's got almost no social housing. So, okay, it's not Redland according to which ward or how you define Redland. We're having a ward boundary review, so we can discuss that one. But the fact is, there's almost no social housing in that area, and there's thought to be something that we should all jump at. I mean, really? You know, after all you've said down there, you ought to be ashamed of yourselves. You really ought to. Right. Is there anything more that we want to say and discuss, or is it better if we just carry on? Councillor Townsend.
Sorry, could you...
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and also can you clarify
because
why you're
I
trying to
cannot actually have continue the discussion forever and ever. So,
can you clarify your previous statement, Councillor Alexander?
Which previous statement?
Well, the one that you just insinuated something about this bench, which none of us were actually saying anything in any way, shape or form. Can you clarify what you were saying?
You have spoken about the importance of social housing and affordable housing many, many times in these committees and outside these committees. It's very commendable, and I look forward to you fulfilling that in the way that you vote in this application. Now, we will move to a vote at this point. The vote is the officer recommendation to approve. Will anyone second that? Councillor Breckles seconds it. Thank you very much. So I will move round and we will see who will vote for and who will vote against. Councillor Townsend, for or against?
Against.
Councillor Stone, for or against?
Against.
Councillor McGrubby, for or against?
For.
For. Councillor Shabalala, for or against?
I don't know if it's for the application or you, but against.
Councillor Gooch, for or against?
I'm actually going to abstain because I can't make a decision one way or the other. I'm very on the fence.
Thank you. Councillor Badruddin?
For.
Councillor Breckles?
For.
And myself, for. Where does that leave us, Norman?
Three against four.
So it's 4-4, 3 against, 1 abstention.
Okay, in that case it is approved. Our next meeting will be on the 1st of April at 2 p.m. and I want to say thank you to everyone for attending, but also I want to say thank you to officers who have been very patient and responded to things over the last few days that have moved quite quickly, and I know that's been challenging for you, but I thank you all for your hard work.